In the news tonight, no new cases, 98 close contacts of doctors identified. Ministry stresses the need for KareFiji app. And government needs donor support.
From the studios of FBC Suva, Edwin Nunn.
KareFiji, 98 close contacts of 2 COVID-19 positive doctors in Lautoka have been identified and placed into quarantine. Permanent Secretary for Health, Dr. James Fong, says some of these staff and patients, they are some staff and patients at the Lautoka Hospital.
This has seriously affected our staffing capacity, particularly for the medical and surgical services. We have redeployed staff from other facilities to cover these gaps. But needless to say, it will be a very demanding 2 weeks of shift for the staff at Lautoka Hospital. Still, we are confident that we can manage. Some of our other contacts are patients. Given that they were seeking treatment for other ailments, we have identified these individuals as particularly high risk. All have been identified, swabbed, and entered into quarantine.
And on a positive note, there are no new cases of COVID-19 as of today. And Christiana Uluwai joins us live now. Christiana, do we know how the doctors in Lautoka were exposed?
Edwin, although the Health Ministry has not yet identified the origins of how these 2 doctors contracted the virus, they are grateful that both of these 2 patients had the app installed and running, which greatly assisted them in terms of their contact tracing efforts, whereby they are able to contact 20 people in a matter of minutes, saving them time and saving them resources, and also saving them time, a significant necessity, especially when battling COVID-19, particularly the B1617 variant.
Christiana, we know Lautoka Hospital will be open, but will all services be available?
As of now, Edwin, all emergency services at the Lautoka Hospital remain operational until further notice. However, the Health Ministry is not resting on their laurels and have contingency plans in place if the investigation leads them to a decision where closing down the hospital is necessary. So people who need to use these emergency services are advised to do so, but to be very cautious and to follow all the safety regulatory measures in place to ensure that they are safe. A minute of carelessness can be very tragical given the contagious ability of this variant. Edwin.
Christiana. Now, as you've heard, the KareFiji app played an instrumental role in identifying close contacts of the Lautoka doctors who were confirmed positive yesterday. Permanent Secretary for Health, Dr. James Fong, says some of the contacts would not have been identified through traditional means, but the app has really proven its effectiveness in the latest cases. He says memory sometimes is an imperfect tool, but the app does not forget.
So far, we have identified 20 close contacts through the app. We found these contacts very quickly. We did not need to publish lists of times or location online to do so. Instead, the app provided that information in a matter of minutes after the doctors uploaded their KareFiji information.
And we now join Aquila Dama live. Aquila, how effective was the app in relation to the 2 doctors?
As highlighted yesterday, Edwin, both doctors had the KareFiji app installed and they had it running as well. Now, so far, 20 close contacts have been identified through the app. These contacts were found very quickly, and there was no need to publish the list of times and also locations online to do so. Instead, the app provided that information in a matter of minutes after the doctors uploaded their KareFiji information. Now, Dr. Fong said there was some skepticism regarding some questions about the KareFiji app, but the recent success relating to the 2 doctors should encourage more Fijians to download the app, Edwin.
Aquila, all players of the Lionheart rugby team have been found and screened. The Health Ministry yesterday made a plea for the team to come forward as they may have come into contact with a COVID-19 patient.
We've contacted and screened all members of the Lionheart Rugby Sevens team we talked about in the last 24 hours. And we've contacted them and they've come on board and have been screened.
The recent COVID-19 cases recorded in Lautoka shows that life in Lautoka is nowhere near normal. Lautoka has been a containment area for 16 days and today is day 9 after a recent reset. Permanent Secretary for Health Dr. James Fong says the newest cases do mean the containment area may last for some time longer. However, he stresses the contact tracing stemming from these cases is progressing well.
We will make an epidemiological assessment of the cases to determine whether the containment area protocols should continue, and if so, for how long. But we cannot make that determination at this stage. I will let you know as soon as we can.
And Josiah Nanunga joins us live now. Josiah, what is the ministry's stand about the details of COVID-19 patients?
Edwin, the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Health and Medical Services, Dr. James Fong, has once again made himself clear that they will not reveal the identity or the information of all our COVID-19 patients. Simple as that. They will never do that. This came to light after the identities of the 2 doctors who are our recent COVID-19 cases were leaked yesterday. However, the Permanent Secretary is thankful that families, friends, and even colleagues called them up to show some comfort and uplift their morale, especially during these trying times.
Nakachusaya. The Health Ministry will be adding 4 new gene expert machines to its capacity. This will be added to the machine that has already been donated by the Oceania Hospital that will boost testing in Fiji by 480 tests a day. The ministry has been shattering testing records nearly every day. Meanwhile, as of today, all 4,000 COVID-19 vaccine doses for Suva have been administered. The Permanent Secretary for Health stresses getting 1 dose of the COVID-19 AstraZeneca vaccine does not mean that people are vaccinated, adding that it takes 2 doses on a 10 to 12-week timeline.
That deployment went off without a hitch, as high-risk individuals, including the elderly, more frontline healthcare workers, bankers, taxi, minibus, and bus drivers came forward to be protected. Oh, yes, and including some of the journalists.
Meanwhile, 4 FBC staff are also in quarantine as they've been identified as possible contacts of a positive case. Our West Bureau editor Felipe Naikaso, along with 3 others, are in either self-isolation or quarantine. This comes as Naikaso and our camera crew were at Tanoa Hotel on April 16th for a story. Naikaso says they are well at the moment and are being monitored by health officials.
My first swab results will be out on Friday or Saturday, and from there they will see how things will go. So far I'm okay. I'm at home, just a bit of headache and coughing, but overall I'm not 100%, but I'm doing well.
Government spending will be maintained to provide social security to the poor, the jobless and the vulnerable in the midst of COVID-19. Minister for Economy A.S. Kayum says this is where donor assistance is most needed to fulfill budget commitments. Economist Dr. Rohit Kishore suggests $500 million for capital expenditure in the next budget. Consumer spending will not be enough to pull the economy out of recession in the short to medium term.
Despite huge reduction in government revenues, it was critical to maintain public spending to stimulate economic activity, ensure public services and social safety nets remain unaffected.
The money must go to the ministries. The ministries budget should not be cut because they are the arms and the legs who's going to move this around. The government has to take the lead it has been taking to turn around the economy together with the private sector.
Fiji has no choice but to borrow more to sustain its ongoing programs and introduce new projects.
Government spending is important during such crisis times. Otherwise, the adverse impact on the poor and vulnerable as well as for the economy will be much larger. However, given the limited fiscal space in most developing countries, donor support and quality of spending will be in this area very, very critical.
And if we pump in enough money through this budget into the ministries, they will start doing their work and they will pull the private sector together with them.
The local economy in 2020 was largely run on consumer spending, indicating that Fijians can sustain small and medium businesses, but there needs to be diversity. Up ahead, Tourism Ministry focuses on recovery and more yachts cruising to Savu Savu soon. Welcome back. The focus right now for the Ministry of Tourism is re-entry and recovery of the industry. While making submissions on 2 annual reports of the ministry, Permanent Secretary Shaheen Ali highlighted that the Fijian Tourism Development Plan will be focusing on COVID-19 recovery. Kritika Kumar reports.
Businesses will be guided on how to re-enter the market once the COVID crisis subsides.
For FT 2021 that I talked about, which was the Fijian Tourism Development Plan, which we are undertaking now, just the preliminary stages, that will be focused again on COVID recovery and our re-entry into market post-COVID era.
The Permanent Secretary during his submission also spoke about the trade agreements.
Just my question. What is your opinion on the free trade agreement with China in comparison to the Buy Fijian campaign?
At the moment, the discussions with our Chinese counterpart is at a very, very infancy stage. So what we did with China was we entered into an MOU which stated that both parties agreed to negotiate.
Fiji is also part of the Pacific Island Country Trade Agreement, which consists of 14 other Pacific Island countries. Kritika Kumar, FBC News.
Fiji's Blue Lane initiative is offering sailors a place to go, with the rest of the world closed due to COVID-19. As Fiji's second Blue Lane yacht port, Savu Savu will be receiving close to 20 yachts soon. Eleanor Turangaiviu reports.
As tourism worldwide remains closed, yachters are taking advantage of Fiji's Blue Lane initiative, which allows for quarantine holidaying, changing crew, bunkering and provisioning, and accommodating those here on humanitarian purposes.
So for the Fiji government to create this Blue Lane process is so great for people like me and for other cruisers out there. It offers some place for them to go.
Savu Savu Bay received its first yacht last week after it was recently designated as a Blue Lane yacht port. The tourism-reliant town can expect more soon.
You know, we have a tracing app, and there's about another 15 to 20 yachts be here in about 10 days.
The social-economic impact of the arrival of these yachts will extend across businesses and communities in Savu Savu.
Mostly the yachts are basically on maybe souvenir items, food stuff and liquor and bars and restaurants. That's what they actually go for, and tours.
Passengers aboard the yachts adhere to rigorous quarantine protocols, including COVID-19 pre-departure testing, 14 days of quarantine at sea or in harbour, and border quarantine exit testing. Eleanor Turangaiviu, FBC News.
Residents of Tovata, Makoi, Tuirara, Kalambu and Cunningham will face water cuts or intermittent supply for the next few days. The Water Authority of Fiji confirms supply is being progressively restored and repairs and recovery are ongoing at the inlet to the Wainimbuku Reservoir. Chief Operating Officer Seru Soderberg says their time frame is dependent on the weather and safety concerns from both COVID-19 and the on-site hazards of a major landslide. A massive landslide at the inlet to the Wainimbuku Reservoir has caused supply disruptions in the greater Suvarnasinu areas.
We are currently filling the reservoir at Wainimbuku, our second major reservoir, and we are looking at completing the filling by this afternoon, and we will start works on recovering additional areas that have been without water since Sunday evening.
Minimal services in the containment zones means bus drivers are working on rotational shifts. The Fiji Bus Operators Association President Nisar Ali Shah says they are working with available options to ensure every driver has some income. Kritika Kumar reports.
The association says individual bus companies in the Western Division are jiggling shifts and sorting out ways to ensure drivers remain employed.
Some companies have given 1 week off, 1 week on. Some companies have given 3 days in a week on and 3 days a week off.
He adds they are going to review the bus services according to the situation.
So we will just see the situation, and then we will see whether we're going to continue operating or not operating. But at the moment, the operation is very, very minimal.
Meanwhile, Eastern Minibus Association President Naresh Chand says they have ceased operation due to restrictions on movement.
We can't just have a good operation, so that is the reason behind we have eased our operation, because it doesn't make any profit on that, so that is the reason behind we have closed down.
The Fiji National Provident Fund last week extended Phase 4 Round 2 relief to taxi, minibus and hire vehicle drivers. Kritika Kumar, FBC News.
Still to come, calls for national lockdown in India. And later on in sports, keen interest from private investors in Fijian Drua.
The recent COVID-19 outbreak has shocked many small businesses who were slowly settling in as things were returning to normal. The second wave has hit exactly a year after the first, and these businesses are forced to close down due to health and safety. Linares reports some businesses have come up with new plans to stay afloat.
New Grills restaurant owner Sikipio Fiaki says doing food deliveries is a way to continue operations.
Still orders that has come in through this week, not as much as last week, but we have to understand what's going on. We have to actually just still work through it.
Business owners are grateful for the spirit of Velomani.
All the SMEs are getting together to try and work together. Even the community, the people that do buy from us, that they still, are still purchasing. That's a blessing to us because everyone's worried about each other.
Merch owner Watisoni Nata Jr. says a group of small and medium local businesses have come up with solutions to help each other.
Really good for mental health because we can vent and talk about our issues and see how we can brainstorm on re-strategizing our business to adapt to COVID.
With many businesses closed, working from home and utilizing delivery services is one way to keep afloat. And many believe that this will continue as Fiji fights to contain the second wave of COVID-19. Lena Rees, FBC News.
The Reserve Bank, in its latest economic review, has stated that the financial indicators mirrored real sector outcomes, as private sector credit fell to negative 3.7% annually in March for the 9th consecutive month. Governor Arif Ali says this reflects heightened credit risk and subdued demand as commercial banks' new loans contracted by negative 8.8% on account of reduced lending to the wholesale, retail, hotels and restaurants, retail estate and household sectors. Ali stated the excess liquidity in the banking system surged past the $1 billion mark in March. Subsequently, lending and deposit rates retreated over the year and month. Foreign reserves in March increased to over $2.34 billion from $2.17 billion in February. This resulted from high external government loan drawdowns, lower import payments and other receipts. Here are the local exchange rates as set early this morning. The Fiji dollar held its own overnight, gaining on the Chinese yuan, US greenback, euro and the Japanese yen. However, it declined slightly versus our two major trading partners, the Aussie and Kiwi dollars, as well as the PNG kina. On the commodities market, oil prices rose more than $1 at $64 per barrel. Gold rose to close at $1,789 per ounce, and silver was up at $26.92 per ounce. We now join Sanifa from HFC Bank with the latest Aussie trade figures from the money markets.
Good evening. The Australian and New Zealand dollars were marginally firmer today, though not enough to recoup a dip suffered on Friday. Australia is set for their central bank policy meeting this week. Although no policy changes are expected, traders will look to a speech by the Deputy Governor on Thursday for insight into the bank's thinking around its bond purchases outlook. On their data front, Numbers released today showed Australia trade balance for March recorded a surplus of Australian $5.574 billion. Their exports dropped 2%, while imports rose 4%. Meanwhile, U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell is due to speak later tonight and will be followed by a raft of Fed officials this week. So let's see what impact it has on our currency basket. That's all from HFC Bank. Back to you, Whitney.
The Ministry of Agriculture has assured Fijians in the lockdown area that they will have sufficient green and fresh fruits. Minister Dr. Mahendra Reddy says flow of animal feeds, veterinary drugs and essential agriculture services are still maintained. The comment comes as the ministry will be running an expanded network of seed package distribution around Viti Levu. Over the last 12 months, through the Home Garden Initiative, more than 52,000 packages of seeds have been distributed. Dr. Reddy says this time around they will not collect data.
We will not be having individual household data like we collected last time, because we don't want to spend more than a minute with each household. We don't want to interact with them much.
That is the latest from my end, but coming up after the break, men sacrifices family time to keep Suva city clean. Stay with us.
Welcome back. The Pacific Blue Foundation is working on preserving the Benga Lagoon, one of the largest in Fiji. The organization is also focusing on protecting the coastal areas and communities to ensure the sustainability of marine ecosystems. Jeshulal reports.
The restoration of the lagoon is critical as it is home to many endangered species in Fiji.
The Benga Lagoon encompasses over 400 square kilometers of lagoon. As such, there's a very strong focus on the marine environment.
However, protecting the coral reef has not been easy as there's an increase in the crown of thorns starfish in Fiji's oceans.
Because more nutrients in the ocean, it gives growth to algae, and algae is food for these starfish.
We're looking into the preservation and restoration of the mangrove forests, which Benga Lagoon as well contain a variety of different sites with lush mangrove forests, which are nursery grounds and habitats for diversity of different creatures.
The Pacific Blue Foundation is also educating the coastal communities in Benga on how to protect their marine ecosystems as it is their main source of food and income. Jeshulal, FBC News.
Lockdown measures have not dampened the spirits of a 57-year-old street cleaner who left his family in Tailevu to ensure his work is not affected. The Suvarnasori containment zone would have meant Joseph Turiva would not be able to make it to the city to work. He acted quickly and decided to stay with his friend. Kelly Vadala reports.
This is Joseph Turiva's daily routine, keeping the streets of Suva clean.
I could spend for my family and myself.
Turiva was a wheelbarrow boy at the supermarket for more than 20 years and started cleaning the streets 2 months ago.
So one of my friends cleaning the streets, so that was what inspired me to.
The job is a step up from working at the market. For this Tailevu man, it's also about endurance and patience.
Nothing is easy nowadays.
With the less movement of people due to the COVID restrictions, Turiva says the streets are much cleaner now and makes his job a little bit easier. Kelly Vadala, FBC News.
And in Q&A today, Eleanor Turangaeviu speaks with Jeff Taylor, the director at the Savu Savu Copra Shed Marina, about the arrival of the first yacht into Savu Savu and the government's Blue Lane initiative.
So what will this mean for Savu Savu?
Well, no, Savu was initially the main yachting, started nautical tourism, so it was great to get the yachts back. And it's a big contributor to the town. That's how we differ a lot from Deneral. You're aware of that. So that the yachting scene contributes to the whole town here, whereas in Deneral you're a bit isolated. And so all the merchants, and we've tried to lower the price and cheap as possible. The townspeople are all helping by sponsoring, and the copper shed sponsoring, so they'll bring the price of the quarantine down to attract the yachts to come in. But
can we expect an increase in economic activity in Savu Savu town?
oh my word, yeah. And Major Nem's been fantastic. You know, it was a government initiative followed up by the Tourism Association, the Town Council and ourselves. So everybody was behind it. It's been fun. They've really done a great job, you know. I admire them and thank them.
Will there be more yachts expected in the coming weeks?
There's quite a lot more on the way. We have a tracing app, and there's about another 15 to 20 yachts be here in about 10 days.
And let's join Jamie now for the latest in sports.
Thanks and good evening. Ahead in sports, Naya Levu shares life after rugby dream. And Rio football determined. This and more coming up. Going on to his 8th year with French rugby club Stade Francais, Waisea Naya Levu already has a fair idea of what life after his playing career will look like. Leaving our shores in 2013 to pursue his professional rugby dream, Naya Levu hopes to one day return and share his knowledge with young Fijians. Venina Rakautonga has more.
Flying the flag high in Europe, the Deumba native always has Fiji at heart.
That's one of the things I'm looking forward to at the end of my career, to come back and give back to the younger generation about my experience and things that they can improve themselves in the rugby field.
The 30-year-old says he will always be ready for national calling.
Yeah, I'll always put up my hands and, if needed, to come and represent our beloved country, our beloved nation, and for my family, for my friends and my loved ones and the people of Fiji.
Former Fiji Sevens rep Apinisa Thakaumbalavu, who plays in the US, shared similar sentiments.
There are about 12 Fijians playing in the Major League right now. This is a good sign for the development of rugby, as we can go back and be able to give back to our communities or our clubs back at home.
Thakaumbalavu plays in the US with the likes of Osea Kolinisau and Chasa Verimalua. Venina Rakautonga, FBC Sports.
The Fiji Rugby Union is encouraged with the interest from private investors willing to team up with the Fijian Drua for Super Rugby 2022. As part of the requirement for the Drua's inclusion next season, a sustainable financial backing. The FRU is seeking private capital, offering a majority ownership of the Drua entity, which will own and operate the Super Rugby franchise team.
Two of the discussion revolves around Australia and New Zealand reaching agreement on the competition for 2022. But the investors are also having direct discussions with both parties, so it's working in progress.
Wallabies forward Rob Valetini has re-signed with Rugby Australia and the Brumbies. The Rio football side is not wasting any time keeping its guard up as it vies for the 2021 Digicel Premier League title. The side was 6 goals short last year, finishing runners-up to Suva, with the wounds of that loss still fresh in the minds of its players. Tali Materikula has more.
The Delta Tigers do not want history to repeat.
All my boys are really committed because they know what it takes to be on top, and they know what it takes to get out from the top position.
The players know this too well and are encouraged to maintain the momentum.
We were on the verge of winning the league last year, and just in the last minute we lost out, so they know that they need to continue they need to stay focused throughout the whole year, and for that they need to do their personal training.
The Fiji Football Association is urging teams to follow through with the deferment.
A lot of our players are full-time players and they rely on their weekly games and weekly match allowances and training allowances. Unfortunately, that's not happening and it's none of their fault. But I'm glad the districts are forking out from their pockets and from the reserves.
All football matches are deferred indefinitely and will resume once the green light is given by the Ministry of Health. Tali Materkula, FBC Sports.
West Ham forward Mikel Antonio scored twice in a comeback victory over Burnley this morning in the English Premier League. The win moves the side up to 5th place on the table, just 3 points behind Chelsea in 4th with 4 games of the season remaining. Now, if you've seen the film Prince of Persia, you might remember a scene from the movie that had people riding on ostriches. Well, apparently it's an actual thing in this day and age. In our quirky sport of the day, ostrich racing. That's it from sports, but coming up, a 71-year-old grandma who turned to weightlifting to overcome despair. Find out more after the break.
Welcome back. News just to hand this evening. The government will be giving eligible Fijians in confinement areas 2 lots of $45 as grocery payment for those living in Nandi, Lautoka and those along the Suvarnasori corridor, which will come to a total cost of over $4 million. Minister for Economy ASA at KM says this will be for those who don't get unemployment benefits and those who can't go to work because the business is not operational. The assistance will not be given to those already receiving the unemployment benefits. The payment will be delivered through the M-Pesa and Digicel mobile wallet. A trough of low pressure with associated cloud and rain remains slow-moving over the southern parts of Fiji and is expected to affect the group until tomorrow. The west was mostly cloudy and humid. There was occasional rain and thunderstorms in the afternoon. Eastwards from Pacific Harbour to Suva, warmer conditions with rain and a few thunderstorms, rain to become heavier at times. In the north, cloudy periods with afternoon or evening showers and isolated thunderstorms expected. At sea, moderate to fresh easterly winds, gusty at times, moderate to rough seas. The next high tide is at 1:49 a.m. with low tide at 7:50 a.m. tomorrow. Sunrise is at 6:21. And the outlook for tomorrow, cloudy conditions with afternoon or evening thunderstorms and isolated heavy falls. For Thursday, cloudy periods with some showers and isolated thunderstorms over the eastern parts and interior of Viti Levu, Vanua Levu, Tavyuni and nearby smaller islands, Lau and Lomai Viti Group, Kandavu and nearby smaller islands. Elsewhere, cloudy periods with isolated afternoon or evening showers. And now to Fijian Pulse, we ask, do you think the prices of groceries have increased during this lockdown period?
Grocery price now going up. Everything price going up. You go and see the supermarket, flour, everything price going up now.
Everything going up, like rice, flour, and small biscuit, tin fish, tuna, going up.
Some supermarkets have really increased the price of groceries. Some are normal, but others are just too expensive.
Yes, the price of food, some of the items are going up. And it will be better if the items go down in these hard times.
At the age of 71, a grandmother and international weightlifting champion says she feels better now than what she did at 40. And recapping our main stories, eligible Fijians in containment areas to receive 2 lots of $45 payments as grocery payments. No new cases and 98 close contacts of doctors identified. and ministry stresses the need for the KareFiji app. For these stories and more, turning now to our poll question. This week we are asking, do you think some Fijians were lying to get food ration in the Suvarnasori corridor? And you can visit our FBC News website to answer. You can also send us newsworthy pictures and videos. Email fbcnews@fbc.com.fj or share it with us via our social media accounts, including Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. You can also download our FBC app to keep updated with the very latest in news and sports and listen to our 6 radio stations live. That's your news this evening. I'll be back again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe. Modemanda.